Welcome to episode 162 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, we're going to be going around the world of skiing, from Africa to Ukraine via the French Pyrenees. My name is Ian Martin. I'd like to introduce our guests today, all our first-timers on the show. So to start off with, I'm delighted to welcome one of the UK's most respected ski journalists, the snow hunter himself, Patrick Thorn. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi, Ian. I'm good, thanks.
Whereabouts are you today?
I am in Inverness. Inverness is calling.
Right. Okay. And can you see any snow from where you are in Inverness? Because I heard there's some on the foothills.
Yeah, I could if there was a window to my left. Unfortunately, there isn't. I'm looking out on the sort of wet bit at the front.
But there is snow around.
Snow on the hills behind us. Yeah.
We also have Sian Grigg, who is from Pyrenean Holidays. Hi, Sian. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good morning.
Tell us whereabouts you are. There's a clue in the name, Pyrenean Odysseys.
In the Haute Pyrenees, so High Pyrenees in France, and in Lucensauveur I live, which is between Lourdes and Gavarnie. Any
snow out of your window?
Yeah, snow out my window. Clouds, sort of hidden by the cloud, but it's definitely up there. It's been going up and down for the last couple of days, but it's definitely there. Yeah.
Cool, that's brilliant. And finally, we've got Jem Rose from Powder Mad, a community for skiers exploring the less visited areas of the world. We're going to be talking about Ukraine a little bit later on. But how are you today, Jem?
I'm really good, thanks, Ian, and it's great to be on the podcast.
Excellent. Well, let's start. I have a traditional question for all of my guests to ask you when you were last on snow. We'll come to you first, Patrick.
That was, Val Thorens in May. The Grand Derniere.
The La Grand Derniere is literally the end of the season there, isn't it?
Oui.
Sian, what about yourself? You live in a ski resort. When were you last on snow?
End of March, because, there's one resort that stays open late around here, but most of the others close at the end of March. So end of March with some friends and my sisters-in-law. Very nice.
Which resort was it?
Up in back. Grand Tourmalet.
Yep. Well, I know Grand Tourmalet well. I've skied there a few times before. And but you don't actually live there. So that's like a short drive to get up. And would you access it via Barèges? Is that how you go in? Yeah,
access via Barèges. It's about 20 minutes from Lucensauveur, just in the car or on the bus. And then up the other side of Lucensauveur is Luzardiden, which people might remember from the Tour de France a couple of years ago. We had a big stage finish at Luzardiden. So anyway, I'm between the two.
Okay, great. And Jem, what about yourself? When were you last on snow?
The same. It was March. I was in the Swanveti, which is in Georgia, quite close to the Russian border, in a village called Mestia.
We have actually covered Georgia on the podcast before, but it fits in with what I mentioned before about Powder Mad and some of the areas that you cover. But we'll come back to that in due course. So just now, I'd just like to remind listeners that the Ski Podcast is sponsored by Les Trois Vallées, which is the largest ski area in the world. And the good news is that after a delay of a week, the temperature has dropped, new snow has fallen, and Europe's highest ski resort, Val Thorens, is opening this weekend. We are currently recording on Friday, the 25th of November, and I believe they'll be opening tomorrow. The resort is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. I will be there in 3 weeks' time. But Alex Irwin from 150 Days of Winter, regular listeners will know him. He will be skiing there this weekend. So we've got a bit of a past and future here. He will be skiing at the point of time that we're recording this, but let's have a listen to what he actually said.
Hi Ian, Alex from 150 Days of Winter with a snow report from Val Thorens. As you probably know, Val Thorens delayed its special opening for a week, and thankfully since then it's had enough snow to open about 60% of the piste. Everything on the Folie Douce side was closed, and so was the Arel Valley. It was my first day back after going to their closing weekend last winter, testing out a new pair of goggles from Radar. The snow quality was good, but as it was also quite busy, pistes that were graded blue were catching out unsuspecting skiers later in the day with ice and bumps. People were even skiing pistes that were shut, only to find halfway down why they were shut. I'll let you in on the secret: not enough snow. Still, so to summarise, the snow was good but not great, but it's a good start to what will probably be a great season. This is Alex signing off and wishing everybody good snow.
In other news, I'm sad to report that Snow Factor, the indoor snow slope in Glasgow, has closed. It looks like it's probably forever. I think that's a combination of COVID and energy prices. Patrick, you're closer than the rest of us to Glasgow. Do you have any insight in this? Was it any surprise that that has closed?
Sadly not. It's been rumoured for a couple of years. I think they've been struggling. Obviously, sad news. There's lots of young trainee and competitive skiers and boarders that are going to miss it.
We've seen from that generation of freestylers that have come through to the Team GB that a lot of them learned on dry slopes and indeed indoors as well. So, one less venue is definitely regrettable. I don't know, maybe it will come back, but really interesting to see how the other snow centres respond this winter, because obviously with energy prices going up, it's going to be a big challenge. But Patrick, I wanted to come back to you. One of the reasons I asked you onto the podcast today is I have recently read your book, which I'm going to hold up now for the benefit of the listener. I'm holding it up for, Jem's got a copy of it as well. Brilliant.
Thanks, Jem. That's great.
Sorry, not me.
Wow.
Around the World in 50 Slopes, subtitled The World's Most Amazing Ski Run. Snow Factor doesn't feature in there, but 50 resorts in 27 countries do. Now, I do get sent quite a few books to review, and some of them are quite generic, especially with lists. But this was, really, genuinely, completely different. Every slope in the book has a story behind it. And some of those stories, it ranges from the invention of the chairlift with Sun Valley, if I recall correctly, Hannibal's crossing of the Alps, political issues like the Taliban, gay rights, dictatorships, and then the intersection with popular culture as well. You've got Lord of the Rings, the Beatles, James Bond. It's definitely not your usual ski book. So my question for you, or my first question for you, Patrick, is how on earth did you manage to kind of choose just 50 slopes or these 50 slopes? I mean, there's so many slopes in the world. It must have been very, very difficult getting that selection down.
Yeah, I could definitely do, a 10-volume version of it. It's just different stories I've written over the years, and some of them stick in my mind more than others. I think I got it down to about 100, and then you had to cherry pick down to the 50. And if you sort of read it, you'll find I've sort of segued in lots of other slopes into,
I honestly have read it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you told me.
In terms of finding the theme behind each story, did you always have that in mind, when you were picking the list of slopes in the first place?
It actually started with a brief from the publishers, and they asked me to write it in that way. The first draft, there was a lot more sort of practical information about how to get to the run and which lifts to take, and that was all edited out. So it's very much about the stories behind the slopes rather than the sort of practical guide.
Yeah, so, as an example, I guess I mentioned the invention of the chairlift, which was Sun Valley. If I recall it correctly, it was something to do with adapting a way of moving bananas.
Yep. So there was a big competition in America in the sort of 40s and 50s to open ski resorts and make them more and more attractive. So somebody thought of a chairlift.
And you mentioned Hannibal's crossing of the Alps in there. I've got a feeling, I can't exactly remember now, was that La Rosière or was that La Tuile?
Well, one to the other, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I've heard that story before, but it's interesting how many tour operators claim that elephants have kind of crossed those pistes, many years ago, because they're not the only ones, are there? I think maybe at the end of the Maurienne Valley, going through maybe Valseni to Italy or something. I think they went that way as well.
Yeah, but La Rosière actually found the elephant's tusk in the snow, so that's the one that clinched it for me.
Do you think they really did do that, or is that just a good bit of PR?
It was on April the 1st they found it. That was the only sort of thing that went against it. Okay. That is a great photo, though.
Excellent. And, obviously Lord of the Rings, people would probably guess that is related to New Zealand. And Bond, there's so many different resorts that have featured Bond. But I think there's only one ski resort that the Beatles were connected to. Was it Obertauern?
Yeah, they filmed Help there, the snow scenes from Help. I had to get the film and watch it again, and they're really good, amazing scenes. Now you've got YouTube, there's lots of bits of film of it being put together and all the sort of fans going crazy outside. So
I think that was, in terms of the insight there, it must have been very difficult for them to actually film in the resort at the time.
Apparently not. They were going to, I can't remember the name, they were going to go to a better known resort. And at the time, Thorens was just not known at all. So they descended on this village and nobody had heard of the Beatles there, rushed down to Innsbruck to get a cassette tape of the music so they knew who they were. And I think they had a fantastic time just because they were away from the limelight and could really have fun.
And so how long did the book take altogether to put together?
3 months writing. It started in summer of last year. It was finished in January this year. Production
I'm amazed that you managed to do it that quickly. There's obviously different themes for each. So basically, you pick a slope and then give it the story behind it, but it's much broader. Jem, you've got the book there. Have you read it?
I haven't read it all. I've got to admit, but I had a flick through. I got it actually a couple of days ago because I knew that Patrick was going to be on the podcast. So I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. So yeah, I picked it up, and the first bit I went to actually was the story about Mount Elbrus, which I spending time in the Swanveti last year. It's very close to the Russian border, and that amazing mountain, which is across the way. And it's interesting to learn that that's the highest ski lift in the world, with the cat ski that takes them up a little bit further. So I think it's about 4,000 meters, isn't it? Which it was amazing. Yeah,
it's interesting. Although, as you say, a lot of the statistical detail, hasn't been dwelled on. It's much more about the stories around these different resorts. There are different claims, like the highest lift is evidently, something that is debatable. And I found myself, calling up Google Maps when I was reading about the Sierra Nevada, and it says, it's the most southerly ski resort in Europe. And I was trying to level it up with Greece and see what happened in Greece, but it's all to do with, everywhere can make a claim. It depends a lot on definition sometimes, doesn't it, Patrick?
Yeah. I like the most northerly, which was the North Cape of Norway, because I'd always thought it was Riksgrensen, but there's lots of about a dozen smaller areas further north. North Cape is the one that I decided was the most northerly, but then I found there's actually about a 50-meter long drag lift for kids on Svalbard. Which is whether anyone would actually go to Svalbard to ride this 50-meter lift.
Yeah, probably not. Although we did actually feature Svalbard on the podcast ages ago, but that was,
great for touring.
Out onto the piste and watching out. If I recall it correctly, I'll put a link in the show notes. But they had a special lookout for polar bears, during the course of their time there. There is a climate change theme throughout the book, Patrick. I know that's something that's kind of important to you. Was it kind of inevitable that was going to end up being part of the story?
Yeah, I've followed ski resorts for 40 years and I've sort of seen it with my own eyes. I think the Vallée Blanche is the most obvious example.
Yeah, actually, that was a page I turned to first when I picked up the book, because what I quite like about it is that, you can jump in anywhere you want to. Jem turned to Elbrus in Russia. I turned to the Vallée Blanche because I first went on it when I was something like 13 years old, and, revisiting it now, there's a massive walk back up, a cable car lift back up from the glacier itself, whereas at that time it was literally a few steps. And sadly, that is an example of it. But anyway, in relation to the book, I recommend it. I suspect that Jem recommends it, although he might need to read a little bit more. It is around the world in 50 slopes. I'll put a link into the show notes. And as I said, it's not your typical ski book. It's just a list of things. Anyone who has a genuine interest in skiing and or the mountains will find it really interesting. So congratulations, Patrick, on producing it.
Thanks, Ian.
Now, Jem, I'm going to turn to you. Ukraine is not a country that features in the book. The reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, Jem, is I think we bumped into each other at the Birmingham show, and you mentioned to me that you were actually skiing. You've skied in Ukraine, ridiculously recently, and in fact, you were there at the time that Russia invaded. And I guess my first question was, like, why were you there?
Well, I mean, I suppose during lockdown, we'd kind of planned a trip to Ukraine. I got some Danish friends who had visited Ukraine and found a resort called Dragobrat, which is like the free ride mecca of Ukraine. So as one of our trips, we decided to put it together, and it's a cat skiing trip. So when we did know about the build-up, the Russian build-up, but we decided to do the trip anyway. I mean, at the time, it was considered to be more of a training exercise, and the view really was that it was Russia and America sort of saber rattling at each other. There was no travel ban to Ukraine, and in fact, at the time, we were more worried about COVID, in fact, than anything else, and certainly didn't expect there to be a war in Europe. So, we organised 5 weeks of cat skiing in Dragobrat, of which we almost completed them all, and we had a super time. We flew into Lviv, which is in the west.
And sorry, just to interrupt you. So you were there for 5 weeks. Does that mean you had different sets of clients coming out, or is this your own personal trip?
No, we had clients coming out with us through Powder Mad. So each trip was a week long, and we had a maximum of 12, which is the max you can get on a cat ski. They all flew into Lviv, and from Lviv we took it's about a 5-hour journey up to the bottom of the valley of Dragobrat, but there are no made roads to get up to Dragobrat itself, so you have to transit into a military 4x4 vehicle to get up to the last section.
Right.
And we skied some of the most incredible powder that any of us had really ever skied. It was phenomenal. It started snowing when we arrived, and it continued to snow and snow and snow and snow. The powder was really very light as well. It was an absolutely superb time.
Had you skied in Ukraine before?
No, I'd been to Ukraine. I went previously in 2015, which was just after actually the Russians had annexed Crimea. But my second time going back was quite different. I mean, in Lviv itself, it was bustling. Very busy, lots of bars, lots of cafes, ice skating rings, lots of people being happy, kind of mirroring any other sort of European city that you may visit. People were very happy, very much on the up and up, very proud of being Ukrainian. And then obviously, sadly, the invasion came and it's kind of destroyed that.
You were out there. How far into that 5-week spell were you then?
We had 5 different sets of guests, and I left about 3 weeks in. Had to go to Georgia because we had other guests going to Georgia as well. And my Danish friend Morten, and we had a German guy Ludger, and we used a local fixer and guide called Helena, who was Ukrainian, remained there in the final week. And the final week, the invasion occurred, and we previously spoke about, if anything was to happen, we never expected anything to happen because the feeling was if something was to happen, it would be over in the Donbass region, in the Luhansk and the Donetsk area, and we were about 1,000 miles by road away from there on towards the Romanian border. So we did kind of have a plan B, but we never, ever expected to have to use that, which was to minibus to the Romanian border and then get a train to Hungary, to Budapest. So that did occur, and everybody got out safely in the end.
Gosh. Okay. So, what a trip for everybody concerned, starting off with, the type of snow that you're talking about. And I wonder if I'd just come back to that. You said it was a cat skiing trip.
Yeah.
And so what kind of accommodation were you staying in? You could only get there on dirt roads going by 4x4. So is it a hotel or is it a property specifically for the cat skiing guests?
It was a hotel. It's a local hotel. I mean, Dragobart is a resort. It's sort of a resort anyway. There are lifts there, but there's no sort of central lift company or anything like that. So if you want to use the lifts, you have to pay the owner of the lift to use it. And I think at the time it was about 40 grivna to have 10 tickets on a ski lift. And it's about 35 grivna to the pound. So it was very cheap if you wanted to do it that way. But we stayed in the hotel and we cat skied. We had a short walk actually to the snow cat. And then we went on from there and skied different areas and different zones.
And what kind of altitude are we talking about here, where you're staying and going up to?
Not particularly high. Maximum you're skiing at is about 1,700 meters. I think due to climate change, we all think about, the higher the resorts, the better. But Ukraine gets incredibly cold in the winter, and many years ago it would plummet down to sort of minus 30. Now when we were there, it was around about minus 15, minus 16. So it's very, very cold, and the precipitation builds up on the Black Sea, and when it hits the Carpathians, it really, really does dump. So you get fabulous snow that stays. So the altitude is not particularly high. The vert that you might do on one cat ski trip would be 300 to 500 meters, something like that. And you do about 11 runs per day.
Cool. Through light, fresh powder.
Yes.
in a completely different culture. And I mean, you mentioned the locals. Are you in contact with any of them? Your fixers? How are they getting on?
Yeah, I mean, Helena, she's Ukrainian. She's from Kiev. She returned to Kiev and she joined the medical corps, and went out to the front line actually in the east. Yes, we're in touch, and yes, if the times are tough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've referred to, I think before on this podcast, it might be some presentations I've done, but the balance between, like, typically, I am trying to, fly less, but sometimes there's a lot of value in actually flying somewhere because of the benefits that you're giving to that local economy. And I think in these kind of circumstances, I'm sure that, I'm not going to ask you to kind of make your geopolitical predictions for the future, but one hopes that there will be a point where you'll be able to travel there and take groups there again. I'm guessing you're anticipating that will happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we want to return. Yeah, we do. We wish the best for Ukraine, and we hope that Ukraine will be, will return back to its former self. And yes, we'd go back. We made a load of friends there, and we drank a lot of vodka with a lot of them as well. But we skied some great stuff, and it is a super place to go skiing that not many people know of.
Yeah, and in the meantime, you mentioned that you had travelled off to Georgia. In terms of your business, this is what you do. You offer the less common, accessible places as destinations. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I've sort of skied all my life, and I've done my time in the Alps and a little bit in the Pyrenees, down in New Zealand and in the States. And I got sort of more interested in going to the more bizarre locations. And it's really, really interesting to go to these places because it's like sort of returning back to the 1920s and 1930s when you've got the start of a resort. And that's exciting. I mean, I read in Patrick's book, for instance, when you're going back in time and the beginning of chairlifts, et cetera, it's a really interesting time. And you can sort of recreate that by going to these locations. I mean, Mestier in Georgia is very similar, I would imagine, to Chamonix in the 20s. So I find that quite exciting. This year we're doing North Macedonia, We're going to go cat skiing there as well. We're going to return back to Georgia as well. And then I've got a few trips that I'm going to sort of check out a few places. One in a heli ski operation in Romania. And then I'm going to go and have a look at some areas of Kosovo as well.
That sounds fascinating. I was on a panel with Rook from Ski Albania.
Yeah, I know him.
At the Birmingham show, and Kosovo is obviously very near to there. So if you have that type of access to unskied territory, that could be really interesting. And you mentioned to me in the green room as well that you are doing a bit of work for some fundraising for your Ukrainian friends.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're working with a charity called War Child, which is there to support children that are affected by in any conflict zone, actually. But they are also in Ukraine too. So what we've done is we've had a ski sock designed by a chap called Paul Kettle, who is a third generation master sock maker, and we are donating a share of the profits to War Child to help Ukrainians this winter. Obviously, recently, a lot of the infrastructure has been taken out in Ukraine. Winters are severely harsh there. They need a lot of support. They need heat, they need warmth.
Yeah,
so it's important. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will definitely put a link to that into the show notes, and that's really good to hear, and really interesting just to hear that the whole of that story. I know it has been covered in Full Line magazine, I believe. I'm not sure if it's available online anywhere. Is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go, it's available on my website,
right.
which is powdermad.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, Full Line magazine have also run an article on it as well.
Okay, well, I'll put a link into the show notes about that, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks,
Sian. Let's come to you. We're moving around the world now, back into the Pyrenees. One of the reasons I want to ask you onto the show is I can't exactly remember how it cropped up now, but we swapped a few emails about train travel to the Pyrenees, which is something I'm very interested in, the train travel side of things. And there aren't actually many places that you can take those overnight trains from Paris. There used to be loads of them. I certainly took them back in the day from Paris down to Bourg-Saint-Maurice or Moutier. But currently, I think there's only two routes, and one is the one to Briançon, where you can then go on to Chevalier and Sestriere, the resorts in that area. But there's also an overnight train that goes down to Lourdes, and that is something that you've been promoting in recent years, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And to be honest, before it only stopped. We used to have a night train, came Paris to Lourdes via Bordeaux, which was called La Palombe Bleue, which had a very romantic name. And they stopped that. I actually can't quite remember when they stopped it, but I'm sort of thinking 2000, not actually very long ago, maybe 2017, 2018. And then ever since then, I've sort of been, I was outraged. And so then, wrote to everybody under the sun saying, what is this terrible, silly idea? And finally, they have put it back because there was a night train that goes to via Toulouse, and they both go to the Spanish border, one on the coast and one just near Andorra. I don't know if you know La Tour de Carol. Anyway, it links up with a train that comes from Spain. And so they've added another link onto that. So basically, a night train goes via Toulouse and comes through to Lourdes, which is great. It's just a really wonderful service. Good to have.
And from your point of view, being based in, I hope I got my pronunciation correct, Luz-Saint-Sauveur, close enough?
Luz-Saint-Sauveur, yep.
All right,
yep.
There we go. That is roughly an hour from Lourdes?
Half an hour. Yeah, an hour on the bus, easily. Half an hour it's 30 kilometres. So close. Okay,
so therefore it's so the logistics wise from that train then, it's leaving Paris.
About 9, kind of 9:15, something like that. It sometimes depends, but about 9:15, yeah.
Yeah. Taking a route via, did you say Toulouse?
Toulouse, yeah. It goes. So you get into Toulouse about 6 a.m. And then all being well, you don't notice, the train splits in three and then goes off in its all three directions. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that type of thing is actually good because you don't want to get to your destination too early. For example, when I've taken the train overnight to the Tarentaise, if you're getting off in Moutier, then you're actually getting there too early because sometimes, the world hasn't woken up yet. If you stay on until Bourg-Saint-Maurice, an extra hour or so later, it's much better. So you're going to get into Lourdes at around 9 a.m. Then you're saying relatively short transfer from there. And so that's something you've been promoting in terms of your business there at Pyrenean Odysseys. And I noticed, I was interested to see that you've been offering offsetting since, I think, 2015. And then it's really been an opt-out since 2018. So you've effectively included offsetting within the cost of the holiday. Is that right?
Not entirely. I guess because we're a small operation, because the trouble with including it is, including it as a sort of blanket cost that would be easy to do. But you might have some client from Australia and you've got some client from the UK. And clearly it's not really fair or very informative, I don't think, for the client that the person from the UK pays the same offset as the person from Australia. So what I tend to do, because I'm I'm trying to make people be a bit aware of the cost, I guess. So for like lots of things in a package holiday, you sort of put it all in together so that to some extent people are not really sure what they're paying for, and that's part of the thing. Whereas this, I really wanted to pull it out and say, this is what your offset is, especially if you're coming from kind of a long way away. So I know where everyone's coming from, and so I will add it into their bill, but I will just say, this is your holiday, this is your offset, you're coming from here, it's this many tons of carbon. If you want to offset it with us, this is what it will cost you. You've also got these options, make them look around a little bit at something closer to home for them. I sort of use it as a bit of an educational exercise as well as.
I think that's really good because, if a listener, you may have listened to episode 160, which is a sustainability special. And one of the things we're talking about there is actually educating the consumer, the traveller, to understand what the carbon cost is in different circumstances. And evidently you're making that very clear up front. And, they don't have to take that. You're saying that they can opt out if they want to, but the educational side of things is really important, and being able to promote the train, is important as well. And just to be a bit more specific then, in relation to, Luz Saint-Sauveur, where are you? What skiing does that offer from where you are?
We are, 10 kilometres up the road from Grand Tourmalet, the foot of the Grand Tourmalet resort, which is the largest in the French Pyrenees. So, everyone's like largest obviously that doesn't count Andorra all linked together and any of the Spanish resorts, but that's kind of it. So that's the biggest resort in our area. And then on the other side, 13 kilometres up the road, Luz-Ardiden, which people probably know more from the Tour de France than they do actually as a ski area. About 25 kilometres up towards Gavarnie, there's a small ski area called Gavarnie-Gèdre, which is cold, to be honest. So it's quite good to have the great thing about staying in Luce is you wake up in the morning, you look at the conditions, you think, where might be the best place to ski today? Which way's the wind going? Where did it snow last night or not? And then you can kind of decide on the day.
Well, I have skied in Grand Tourmalet on several occasions. And as you say, it's a decent-sized ski area. I think off the top of my head, it might have like 100 kilometres apiece or something like that.
Yeah.
So a combination of Barège and La Mongie.
Yeah.
And La Mongie is maybe 1,800 metres, a bit higher. But you've also got the Pic de Midi there, which is fantastic. Yeah. And I recommend to you, listener, if you've never been to the Pic de Midi, to do that. It's a very high cable car, which will take you to what I believe is going to be certainly the highest observatory in France, maybe the highest observatory in Europe, and there are lots of educational tours that you can do up there. But it's akin to the Aiguille de Midi. It's
2877. Sorry.
28. There you go. But I did stay the night there a few years back, and it's I haven't often slept that high. I think I slept that high when I was in Nepal. Years back, but pretty hard when you're trying to get to sleep at near to 3,000 meters. But it was brilliant up there. And obviously, one of the things that they offer up there is stargazing, because you get this, there is an observatory there, an incredible view of the stars at night, if you're lucky enough with the weather. So, yeah, all of that there. And I think, we touched on the Pyrenees, unlike perhaps many British people, I've been there lots of times before. What I particularly like about it is, don't want this to come the wrong way, but you don't hear that many British voices there.
Yeah, especially not in our valley, I don't think. I think possibly St. Larry, a few more. There's all sorts of reasons for that. Local authorities haven't kind of really decided that the British market is perhaps for them. It's a very regionally based market. Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. Not such great. Sometimes a bit more complicated logistics. Sometimes there's just not a kind of straight line to everything. I think that's possibly why.
Yeah, for sure. But, it's never been as popular with the UK market, although it represents tremendous value for money. I mean, I went there with my kids during half term a few years ago to basically establish that you could do it. And I think we did the whole trip for £2,000 for a family of 4. And we didn't ski a whole week. I think we only skied for 4 days. We did 1 day in Courtrai, 2 days in Grand Tourmalet, and then one of the days we took the day off skiing entirely and went up to the Pont d'Espagne National Park.
Oh, yes.
And went a hike, a guided hike up there, which was absolutely tremendous. Really interesting. What I liked about that was to try and show to my kids that ski resorts are more than just the lifts and everything like that. You're in the mountains. You can enjoy all of this as well on a holiday. And the Pyrenees also are packed full of natural spas. I imagine you probably have some near you somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's some in Luce, over in Saint-Sauveur. That's what the Saint-Sauveur bit is, to be honest. That's the thermal bath area. Barrage has a thermal baths. Argelès has thermal baths. Courtrai has thermal baths. They're all over the place. Yeah. It's a nice combo.
Brilliant. Cool. Okay, Sian, that's brilliant. Thanks for giving us an update on that. And I'll put a few links into the show notes with a link to Pyrenean Odysseys and also to that train. And if things have gone well, I've just written an article for the Independent about train travel, and I'm talking about that Lord link in the train in there as well, so you'll be able to track that down somewhere. I'd just like to drop in at this point an interview I did relatively recently with James Gambrill, who is general manager of the ski club. You'll recall, long-time listeners will recall, he's been on the podcast several times before, but I wanted to talk to him about the year that has passed since he took over as general manager at the ski club. I spoke to him back in episode 75 when he'd just taken over. So let's have a listen to hear how that first year has gone. I'd also like to ask you about your role, in the ski club of Great Britain, because you've been there just over a year now. It is a role that carries quite a few challenges, but I know you've made quite a lot of progress in the last year. I wondered if you'd like to sort of, I don't know, summarise what you see as the main achievements in that year one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it is a role with challenges, and of course, starting last year and then heading into last season, there were considerably more challenges as countries closed and travel bans came in, and COVID sadly kind of got a grip on us again. But we had a very successful year in the end. So, firstly, we managed to run all of the program that the ski club runs. So we run our Fast Tracks Holidays program. We sold out of that program. It was reduced for the COVID year, but we sold out holidays, actually added another holiday to Thain at the end of the season. So that was successful. Our reps program, which goes currently across 19 resorts, and we managed to get that up and running in all resorts. Again, we had some challenges with, being able to get reps out with travel bans, and obviously some people dropping out because of COVID related factors, but we got reps into resorts and actually had one of our highest years ever in terms of members meeting up with the reps and going skiing together. So that was very successful. We returned our magazine from being an online magazine to being a full A4 printed magazine. So we printed 4 copies last year. We were going to print 3. We ended up printing 4 because the demand was there. So it was great to see the magazine kind of come back. Our membership increased. We obviously lost some members over COVID, particularly our platinum membership, which includes annual travel insurance. Of course, during COVID, why would you have an annual travel insurance policy? But that's come back really strongly. So thousands of new members joining with that travel inclusive product. So that worked very well. It's no secret that the ski club had some difficult financial years preceding COVID. We made a lot of changes in the way that the club is structured. We moved offices into a smaller, more affordable office. Like every organisation, we're a mixed team now. So we've got some, hybrid working, some people working remotely. So we cut some of the structural costs of the club. And we ended up with a profitable year last year. We are a not-for-profit organisation, so that money can be reinvested back into the club. So yeah, it was a very tough year, but we came out of it in a good place.
Excellent. And moving on to next season, then I think you mentioned to me when we were chatting before that you're planning to introduce more reps as well. Because if last year the take up was really good, then evidently there is a demand for that. So you're looking to put more reps out in resorts?
We are. So the reps program is, we're a member of the club who's been through our reps course, is based in resort normally for 3 weeks at a time, and they're a focal point for members. So members can arrive in the resort, they can go and find the rep. The rep is a wealth of information about what to do in resort. They can help them, with bookings. They can help them find a mountain guide or a ski instructor. They also help members find each other to go skiing. The rep will sometimes go skiing with a group, or the groups go off skiing together. And of course, as there's less and less reps in resort from tour operators, then I think the value of the rep is becoming increasingly significant for members. Because if you travel with a tour operator, but you're a member of the club, you can still meet the rep. We're in 19 resorts at the moment. We have been in 45 historically. We are planning to get back to 45 in the next 3 years. But in the next 12 months, we're planning to add probably somewhere in the region of 7 to 8 resorts. And so we're speaking to resorts at the moment. I've been having lots of positive conversations here at Listex and over the last kind of few weeks with the resorts. So we're now finalising that. And I would say probably by sort of end of October, we'll be able to start releasing the new resorts. That we're
Great. Well, that's really exciting. I certainly remember, over the years when I was younger, we actually used to meet up with the Ski Club of Great Britain rep when I was on holiday, with my mum and my brother when we were kids, and go and ski with them. So, and I think it evidently means a lot. I think a lot of the British skier market do enjoy that sort of thing. As someone who worked as a ski guide myself, once upon a time, I know that guests, love to go out with someone who knows the area, and without going into all of the legal aspects for why the ski guiding side of things stopped. The fact the Ski Club of Great Britain is able to still provide reps is a really good thing. I think I'm right in saying the Ski Club of Great Britain, one of the oldest ski clubs around, was founded in 1903. So by my calculations, that means there's a big anniversary coming up at some point.
There is a big anniversary, yeah. So May the 6th, 1903, the club was founded in the Café Royal in London. I think we've still got the original. We've still got the original notebook where the kind of articles of the club were scribbled by the founder members. We've still got that as a document in the club's library. So yeah, next year we're 120 years old, which always gets a reaction from anyone that we speak to. So we are planning to obviously mark that anniversary as well. We've got lots of work going on at the moment to kind of look at the ways that we can mark it. We'll mark it with an event, but we'll also mark it kind of across the year with everything we do, at ski shows and obviously in resort, to celebrate the fact that we've been going for 120 years. And it's great that we will be going into our 120th anniversary with the club on in a stable platform, expanding membership, expanding member services with the reps. We're expanding things like our partnerships program where we work with tour operators and retailers. And again, I think that at the moment, as we talked about earlier with the survey, skiers, UK skiers are going to ski next year. The outlook is positive, but they are looking for ways to save money. And obviously, one of the great things about the club is with all the partnerships, you can save a lot of money. So, we're looking to really improve the offering that we have here and there for members and enhance that saving. So, we're all about helping people go skiing.
Cool, great. Well, I look forward to finding out what the new resorts are and finding out what your celebrations are going to be for the 120th anniversary as well. And maybe we can have a chat in a year's time.
Absolutely.
And tell us how it went.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, James.
Thanks, Ian.
So that was really interesting. Ski Club have got, a lot more reps out in resort this winter than they had previously. And there are definitely plans for more of them to come as well. And, he makes a good case for membership there as well. So we'll see how that progresses. Right, we're coming to the close now. I enjoy all feedback about the show. Please do contact me on social at The Ski Podcast or by email, theskipodcast@gmail.com. I've got a few bits of feedback from different people. We had a couple of people send in comments. Richard Salden said, enjoy the podcast and the wide range of topics and opinions. Andy Thain said, keep up the good work. And Sean Lally said, love the pod. Now, Sean also asked a question about swapping rental skis during the week. So I recently caught up with Chris Moran from Intersport Ski Hire, who gave us a bit of background about that. Great. I'm joined by Chris Moran from Intersport Ski Hire. Now, Chris, one of our listeners asked about, how easy or not is it to change your skis during the course of the week if you've hired? And I thought, well, who better to ask than yourself? So I wondered if you could kind of give us an update on that.
Yeah. I mean, so the way it works is if you, you hire the skis on like a grade system. So the cheapest ones are blue graded, like the, beginner piece. The most expensive are the blacks and the gold. We have actually a gold category. If you hired the gold skis, then you can take any ski in the shop. So you can walk in and say, I want those really amazing racing skis if it's icy. But if it snows, take out the Black Crows or whatever powder skis. And we don't really say that there's a limit on how many times you can change, because generally people don't change. So, if the people in the shop have time to do it, then it'll just take 30 seconds for them to swap over your, on the bindings. It takes literally seconds for them to move it, and maybe they'll have to change the din, but not a huge amount of time, and then you can just be on your way. So it would only be a problem if it was like the Saturday morning that you wanted to do a ski test, or the busy periods. But on a Monday afternoon or Tuesday, whatever. Right. No problem.
Okay, and typically that's going to happen if you've gone for the gold option. Like if you're going for one of those lower options, there probably just isn't that range of skis there.
Well, there is always. I mean, even in the blue package, there's like a blue carving, there's blue freestyle. In the teen package, we've got like teen race, teen freestyle. So the race ones are really good, carving skis essentially, and the freestyle ones are twin tip skis. But it just means if you take the gold package, literally every ski in the shop is open to you. But every ski in the shop is open to you anyway, because what you can do is, let's say you've hired the blue range, but you want what essentially is the gold package. There'll just be an upgrade fee, and it could be, it could be €3 or €4 for the day. I mean, it's not going to be a huge amount of money. I think when we worked it out, the average was about €8 or €9 per day anyway. So it's not, we're not talking about huge amounts of money here, and the shop is more than happy to upgrade.
Right. Okay, great. And what about if you wanted to change, across, I don't know what the term is, like a category from alpine skis to cross-country skis, for example, or touring skis?
Yeah, again, same. Just go to the shop, because we have obligatory packages that all the shops have, which is, essentially the blue, red, black, gold. But outside of that, lots of the shops, so in Chamonix, you'll see lots of backcountry skis. You'll see, randonnée skis, which some of them are great for going downhill. Some of them are great for going uphill. Really depends what you've got in the shop. But yeah, the shops are always happy to upgrade or swap. I mean, lots of people go snowboarding for the day. That's a really popular thing. So you get a group, they all want to come in, they all swap for a snowboard for the day, and they go out. Often that's completely free.
Cool. Okay, that's brilliant, Chris. Thanks very much for explaining that to us, and look forward to having you back on the show again at some other point.
Thanks, Ian.
There are over 160 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up with. Amazingly, 127 of them we listened to in the last week. I like to think that's probably new listeners catching up. I'd love to hear where you listen to the podcast. It might be commuting, in the gym or at work. Andrea Dalton sent in a message saying, I'll be having a listen on my dog walk in the morning. So hopefully you'll be listening to this on Tuesday morning, I guess, Andrea. Now, if you enjoy the show, why not review us? It helps other people find us. Apple Podcasts is the best way to do that. And if you leave a comment as well, we'll read it out on the next episode. But for now, you can follow me at Skipedia, the podcast at the Ski Podcast. I'd like to thank Les Trois Vallées for sponsoring the show and thank my guest today. Patrick, thanks very much.
Always good to see you.
Jem, thank you.
Thank you.
And Sian, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.